Well, hello and welcome. Welcome to Around the Town with Mark. I am Mark Whalen, your host, and you know that I'm always glad to have you tune in and visit with us. Well, coming up in a couple of weeks are midterm elections. Of course, election time is everybody's opportunity to vote, to have a voice as to what's going on in their community. And I really believe that everybody should vote. If you don't, then don't come complaining if you don't like what's happening. Anyway, there's a lot of issues to talk about this year, as usual, and also we've got some great candidates. Today, one of my guests is someone who I think you would be very interested in getting to know and perhaps vote for. So just allow me to go ahead and introduce my guest. Bob Statchen, is that right? Did I get it right this time?
Back in Statchen.
Back in Statchen. All right, great. Well, Bob, welcome to Around the Town with Mark.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks so much for having me.
Pleasure to have you here on the show. So let's start out by having you introduce yourself to my guests and audience, and tell us who is Bob Statchen.
Statchen. It takes.
But aside from the candidate,
Sure.
Tell us about yourself.
Sure. So I'm from Connecticut, born and bred. Both sides of my family are from Connecticut. One grandfather was a locksmith. One was a baker, and I grew up around here. I grew up in actually we would come down to Lord's Point in the summer since I was 5 years old, So this was an incredibly special place for me in southeastern Connecticut. I ended up going to college on an Air Force ROTC scholarship. Went on active duty into the Air Force. Traveled the world, got to see Egypt, Oman, Russia, Germany, everywhere. And at the end of my tour, I really felt like, I wanted to go back to what I consider to be the greatest place in the world, which is southeastern Connecticut.
And it is.
And it is.
It really is.
Yeah. And I think by going away, I became one of the biggest cheerleaders for it.
We're in the gym.
What's it? We really are. Yeah. We're incredibly blessed and incredibly lucky. And I think that so when I came back, I still the Air Force I'd enlisted when I was 18 in the Air Force ROTC program. So certainly I wasn't ready to cut the ties. So I joined the Connecticut Air National Guard, and I continue to serve in the Connecticut Air National Guard. I'm a colonel.
For your service.
Yep, thank you. It's an honor to serve. It really I feel very lucky that I've been in a position to serve. I'm the lawyer for the Connecticut Air National Guard headquarters, and I've been in that unit for 21 years, and it's just fantastic people doing a good mission. When disaster strikes, our people are out there with chainsaws and shovels and clearing roofs and doing that, and I love the service. And when the nation needs us, we get activated and we go to war and we go overseas. And so for me to be able to be in a unit in my state, the National Guard was a great fit for me. And so I've been serving there. I've also I worked at a law firm down at Stamford for a couple of years, but then came up and was at Tobin Carberry here in New London, and was there for 5 years, and then was of counsel with the firm for another 5 years. So working on transactions in the region, working with businesses, helping them grow, helping them get loans, helping them buy buildings, helping them hire people, helping them expand. And so I enjoyed doing that. While I was at Tobin Carberry, I also taught at the Coast Guard Academy in their law department, which I really enjoyed. Amazing cadets, as everybody in this region knows. We don't have to tell anybody here how special those cadets are over there. But it gave me the itch for teaching. So about 10, 11 years ago, I got an opportunity to teach at a law school. To run a small business clinic. So it's experiential learning, which means that the students, it's not just sitting in a class behind a podium. The students actually, we bring in clients who at this point in their business development, they're all low-income entrepreneurs who at this point in their development, they don't have the resources to get legal services. But they come to the clinic, and I oversee the students providing those services. So we'll help them form their company, we'll help them get a trademark, we'll help them draft their client contracts, we'll help them hire their first employees, we'll help them with regulations. And so the clients get the benefit of helping their business and being able to develop, and then the students get the benefit of it's their first time being able to provide legal services, which they're really excited to do.
All of what you've just said all sound like, especially in your military career and the experiences that you must have had, sound like they're the perfect foundation to go into a political career. And I'm not trying to make a joke about going into comparing it to war. Right. But
no, it's not a bad analogy. It's not a story that sometimes one of my tours was in Bosnia, and this was after the war, bringing people together. So this was, the fighting was over, but there were a lot of problems. One of the problems was the upper airspace over Bosnia was closed to commercial traffic, which accounted for 40% of the delays in Europe. And so as part of the normalization process, I went over there and was sent by the Air Force to work in the Office of the High Representative to help open that airspace. And what happened was there used to be one country with air traffic control, and they had a system. And now there were 6 countries, because after the war ended, the countries were divided. And we had to get those, and each of those countries wanted their own air traffic control system, which wouldn't have made sense, which was silly. They needed one, but they all wanted their own, and they needed to trust each other. And the problem was they had been killing each other quite recently.
That to me sounds, and I'm not going to put words in your mouth, but that to me, I'm hearing that you're willing to work with not just your party, but with both sides, bringing both sides together for the good of everybody.
Right, and we needed to find common ground. And we did, and we worked with Northrop Grumman, Lockheed Martin, the embassies, the representatives from the new countries, international ICAO, the International Civil Aviation, Eurocontrol, and at the end of my tour, we opened the airspace, which was something I was very proud of. Right. A friend of mine was driving in Sarajevo, and his taxi driver looked out the window and saw contrails up in the sky, and he said, "Wow, that's normalization," because he said he hadn't seen it since 1991 when the war started, and felt that was so. I think that I'm looking for solutions. I'm looking to help. I'm looking to is anybody of good faith that wants to sit in the table and talk. That's what we need to do, and Connecticut deserves that, and I look forward to doing it.
What, with all your busy life and career and everything else, what made you decide to get into politics and run for the U.S. Senate, 18th district?
The state senate. There's a great Parks and Rec episode where they always say state senate when they're saying it's a state senate. Yeah, right. And I think along with a lot of my friends, are frustrated. I think we're frustrated with what we see on TV. I think we've lost some of the nobility, the honor that comes with our government in some ways. And there's a list of things, and I'm not going to point fingers, but I can tell you I was frustrated. I've served this country, I've represented this country, and I didn't like the direction it was going. So I looked around to see, okay, what could I do? How could I make a difference? And when I saw that this race, that the Senate was tied 18-18, and the result would be if we lose a seat, we're going to have a red Senate. That I said that's where I can make a difference, because right now, and I'm not a big partisan person. Both my parents were Republicans. I probably worked with one or two in the military. I'm not a partisan person, but I do feel right now the Republican economic policies are not good for this country, and they wouldn't be good for this state. I don't believe in trickle-down economics. I don't believe that you can simply cut tax for the 1% and all the corporations and we'll be fine. I don't believe in that. I believe in progressive economics, where people have a livable wage, where people have access to health care, where education is a priority. That's what I believe, and I believe that again, a red Senate would not promote those values. And so that's why I ran. I felt like this was an area that this was a place where I could make a difference and further what I believe, represent the state of Connecticut, represent this district, and do some good. Let's do everything we can to have the best schools we have. Let's do everything we can to make sure that people have health care, and that doesn't have to be and they don't go bankrupt getting it. And people are doing that. And so that's why I ran. I want, I think my and I have 3 kids, 17, 15, 12, and they watch TV. They see what's happening in the world, and I feel like we've let them down a little. I feel like we let them down. I think they're seeing things. I think they're seeing norms that are now, maybe they're the norms, but I don't think they have been the norms of our country. Or the norms of our state. I think we are a people who value honesty and integrity and truth and facts, and I think we're in a place right now where maybe that is being it's not being furthered. And I want my kids to see that there are people, myself and others. I've met some phenomenal people in this process. A lot of people who are working to get us back there because we're that good. We are that good, and we need to remember it, and we need to get back to it, and we will.
Now, I want to spend most of our time today talking about the positive and what you are seeing that needs to be done and what your plan on doing that is. But let's just make mention a little bit. I told you I was going to make this mention. This came in my mail today, so I'm sure it's coming in the mailboxes of a lot of viewers. And, it's a little bit of a negative about Bob and his positions on certain issues. You've had a chance to just glance at this.
Sure.
Just without going into detail,
sure.
What would you tell that people that are reading this in their mail today, although most people don't read it, most people just do that?
I think it reflects that there isn't there's not a lot out there on me. And so this idea of the radical politician, the radical professor, I've had secret clearance with the Department of Defense since 1990. I've had top secret clearance since 1999, which means every 5 years they go to my neighbors, my employers, and make sure that I am worthy of having that clearance level. And so there's not a lot out there. I'm actually pretty boring in a lot of ways, and so I think this reflects sort of the fact that there's not that much. And I gotta give kudos to Dan Gajewski, who is a senior at Fitch High School, because Dan, when we met in June, he came up to me and the first thing he said to me was, all they have to destroy you on is your own website.
Oh, okay.
He says that's what they're gonna. And this kid is one of the most astute political people that
very
I've
intelligent
ever. Right.
Thing
I mean, it was really, and and I said, oh well, we'll see how that, and he was exactly spot on, right. And that's
Smart
what
kid.
they've done. He is a really smart kid. We're going to hear that name more in the future. I have no doubt. But so what they've done, is sort of go there where I say, we should have affordable health care. Where I say, similar to Joe Courtney. Joe Courtney has a bill that he's looking to Medicare 55. I do believe that we should have, Medicare for all. I think that's a long-term goal. I respect the work Joe Courtney does where he's got Medicare 55. Saying, okay, let's at least bring it down to 55. That could impact our state budget. That could impact people's care. It could start to show the trend that is an appropriate trend for us to be going in. So that becomes I think, $32 trillion government takeover. I guess that means that my plan as a state senator is going to take over the entire country's health care, which I didn't realize that a state senator had the authority to do that, but that's fantastic. But do I believe our infrastructure should be reviewing potential revenue sources? What bothers me is the misperceptions and the misleading statements. Saying that that tolls are going to cost someone coming down from Griswold $3,200 a year.
I was going to say the one thing on this that stuck out with me that I would think would stick out with a lot of people that look at it is tolls.
Right, and so apparently there's I'm hoping there's a report. I haven't seen it on my opponent's website or anything. I post all reports that I rely on my website, but I haven't seen this one. But apparently there's some report that says it's going to cost 32 cents a mile. That haven't. The State Department DOT said with Easy Pass, we're looking at 4 cents at most on it. So again, it's
does that mean you are for or?
Oh, I think we need to improve our infrastructure. That's the starting point. The starting point is we need to improve our infrastructure.
Okay.
And if somebody came and said, we have a way to do it that doesn't involve tolls, but we can have the infrastructure that's going to make sure that companies come here and thrive, I'm happy to talk about it. But let's start with the baseline that our infrastructure is crumbling. We have bridges that need to be repaired. That's the starting point. At this point, I do believe tolls have a role to play, just like it has a role to play in every other state along the eastern seaboard. There's one other state, Vermont. There's only 10 states in the country. There's only 5 that don't have tolls. There's only 5 states east of the Mississippi. Okay. So, I mean, it is a viable revenue source that we should explore. 35% of the revenue would come from people out of the state who are using our roads yet not having to pay for it. I would like to see it less regressive by maybe combining it with a reduction in the gas tax, so people stop driving over the border where it's 20 cents cheaper a gallon to get a gallon of gas. I think that would make sense. We can't rely on gas revenues for this with the energy efficiency of the cars, the vehicles, the electric vehicles. Even non-hybrids are getting 40 or 45 miles an hour now, miles a gallon now.
Most people, and myself being one of them, when I think of tolls, I think of backup traffic trying to get through those tolls, where usually I just go over that Gold Star Bridge and I'm there, but am I going to have to now like slow down and go through the
Well, as the Commission on Fiscal Responsibility recommended, again, that's another radical group. That's one of my favorite things, is many of my positions come from that commission.
Okay.
And they said electronic tolls. And what that means is you're going to have I don't know if I have an Easy Pass for when I go to New Jersey or when I go to other places, so I can go, so you don't have to go through the tolls. And it's just electronic. Massachusetts, it's the same thing. It's all electronic. So we're not going to have those issues. That's why in 1984 there was a horrific car accident, and that resulted in us getting rid of our tolls. A lot of those problems. How does every other state be able to pull this off, use this as a revenue source, but for some reason Connecticut's not able to?
Okay.
We can do it. We can do it.
All right. Well, I just wanted to make a little bit of mention of that. We can put this away.
I will tell you, the best part, my students love it. My students love that I'm the radical, because I did put it on my door. I said I was going to put it on my door.
Did you?
So there's another one. So they absolutely love that I'm the radical professor, and they're quite amused that their business law professor, who traditionally is considered one of the more boring professors in the school, is now got the label of radical. So.
Well, Professor, tell us how about what other issue? Let's not worry about what your opponents are saying.
Yep.
What do you see? What do you want to accomplish?
Sure. So I think the biggest jobs, and I agree with Senator Austin. I agree with Joe Courtney and just about anybody else who's talking. We need to build the economy, and again, I think there's common ground there. I think 9 out of 10 Republicans would sit at the table and say the same thing to you. So now the question is, how do we do it? How do we build up the economy? How do we do that? One of the biggest problems for the state right now is the unfunded liabilities, and this starts to get into the weeds. But the bottom line is 30% of our budget goes to paying debts that predate 1984. I mean, we started in 1939. We started a pension program, and we didn't pay into it. We didn't start thinking about paying into it until 1971. We tried, and didn't from 71 and 91. We made efforts, but it wasn't great. 91, we tried again with the income tax. There were things that were done to stop payments on it because, and now, the fund should have, I believe, about $78 billion, and it's got $34 billion. That's the problem, and we need to fund that. So last session, the legislature addressed the state employees situation, and they created a payment plan so that over a period of time, reasonable, predictable payments. That's what businesses want. They want predictability. They want to know that there is predictability, and that's what that agreement for the state employees contract created. the next legislative session is going to deal with the teachers' pension fund. And we need to create that same level of predictability. And there's things we can do to do that, whether it's allocating the lottery funds to make sure that they go to the fund to reduce that debt. But we got an old credit card. We got an old credit card, and we got and people have gone through that at home, where all of a sudden, oh geez, I got an old, we got to pay this one off. And so it's not going to be easy, but you set up a plan. Maybe you use one of those 0% for 12 months, and you try to pay a lot during that. But we got an old credit card, we got to pay that. That's what's holding us back. The workforce from 2008 to present has been reduced 21%.
So it's making a plan.
So there's we're reducing our work, we're reducing costs, that is happening, but that unfunded debt has been a tremendous issue. That's what the next legislature has to deal with. I would say at the same time, concurrently and related and complementary to each other, is addressing healthcare costs. Right now, Kevin Lembo purchases healthcare for 250,000 residents in Connecticut through various programs. That gives him a bargaining position to go to the table and say, these are the things that we want covered. We want to make sure you cover pre-existing conditions for this, because he's got that. I want to increase his ability to negotiate in that way, whether it's the municipal plans, getting more municipalities to join in to be that, increase the bargaining position. It's like Walmart, negotiating with retailers.
Sure.
You do what they say because you want to get your thing in the store. We want to give him the authority to go in and negotiate and make sure that we can get the best health care at the best prices. We got to the prescriptions are out of control, and we need to make sure that there was a bill that required the drug companies if they were going to increase their costs by 20%. They would have to announce that and spread it out over 5 years. My opponent voted against that. Why would you not have that predictability in healthcare? So I think, again, getting predictability in regards to the teachers' fund, getting predictability in regards to healthcare costs. I think those are two major issues.
So sort of recognizing your bargaining power and making a plan and executing that plan, utilizing that bargaining power to make changes.
Right. And I think there's a lot of opportunity. People spend a lot of time talking about, Connecticut and the narrative I think that the other side kind of projects is that everything's horrible. Connecticut's doom and gloom. Oh, we can't get out of our own way. We have some of the finest educational institutions in the world in our state. Our geographic location in between Boston and New York gives us so much opportunity. 1/3 of the entire U.S. economy is within 500 miles of our border. We're number 3 in the U.S. for employees with advanced degrees. We're number 4 in the U.S. for private research and development investment. And the list goes on. We have problems, and I think some of the main ones have to do with that unfunded liability, which has caused us economic problems. But we cannot lose sight of how strong we are as well, and what Connecticut has to offer the world, the country, and we need to position ourselves so our children are ready to go out and do these amazing things.
Well, our area here in southeast Connecticut has a tremendous amount of resources.
Correct.
We are very, very, very fortunate to have all the wonderful things that we have between the maritime, the river, the military presence. There's just a lot.
Right.
There's just a whole lot out
there. There is, and I would like to see that spread, and I would like to see it spread in our district.
Some of it underutilized, like our airport service and things like that.
Yep.
There are things that really could be better utilized.
Right. And I would like to see it expand north as well, because I know I've spent a lot of time banging on doors in Plainfield and Griswold and meeting with folks up there in Voluntown and Sterling.
And Groton, that's how.
And Groton, and
I met you. You were at my door.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And I want to see that opportunity expand up north as well. Rising tide raises all boats and all that kind of stuff, and I think it is true. I looked at the EB had a chart when they were recently negotiating the agreement with the state that had the number of suppliers in Connecticut and kind of states and marking towns and which ones had them. And I noticed that Griswold and Sterling didn't have any. Let's see what we can do about that.
Right.
Let's
Okay.
see if they're this close. Let's see if there's a way to, we need to bring up this whole region and do that. And I think there's opportunity to do that with the work that Representative Courtney has done for the region to make sure that that's vibrant. But there's other things as well. Healthcare is going to be, with our population, healthcare is going to be a big economic driver. Tourism. And again, not just, the tourism, there's a lot of opportunity there. We have the aquarium, we have the seaport, which are national treasures, and we're so lucky to have those. But I would say also tourism up north. A lot of that Patchogue Forest is one of the largest green areas in the entire Northeast. And I think there's a lot of opportunity. There shouldn't be a gun range there, and I've said that before.
I agree.
There shouldn't be a gun range there.
I agree with that
but
one.
not only that, let's switch to the positive. What an amazing resource. What an amazing resource, in Voluntown and Griswold and Sterling, that area. And we need to promote that more than we do and make sure that can be an economic driver for that region, because it's the ponds that are up there, the water skiing, the sports. The more time you spend up there, the more you realize, maybe I don't have to drive to New Hampshire. Maybe I don't have to drive to Vermont
it's
and
in your
do
own
that.
backyard.
It's a 30-minute drive, and you can have an amazing hike, around Hopeville Pond, or
So keep
which
those
is stunning,
people,
beautiful.
Keep those dollars. Keep
them local.
Keep that local.
Keep them local, and we have the resources to do that.
Yeah.
I'm a cheerleader. I love the region.
Well, you're obviously a good cheerleader, and your enthusiasm is, I think, very, very important in any kind of work that you would want to do and accomplish. If you don't have the enthusiasm, where is it going?
I've said this before. I mean, again, by being in the military, I've had the opportunity to travel a lot of places, certainly a lot of places that are not as privileged as Connecticut or the United States. And I've seen people in very destitute situations and in very difficult situations. And what it brings me, if we can't do it here, if we in Connecticut can't join together, sit at the table, find solutions, shame on us. Shame on us.
Yeah.
With everything that we have, with the schools, with our geography, with everything, we need to find solutions, and we can, and we need to get the right people involved finding those solutions. And they're not partisan solutions. They're not, it shouldn't be based on, it should be people before politics. One of my favorite people that I go on doors with, Christine Rosati Randall, she has it on her flyer. People before politics, people before party. And I have a lot of respect for her, and I think she does a great job, and I think she's right. That's what we need to do. That's where the focus has to be 100% of the time.
Well, Bob, we're out of time.
Okay.
I want to thank you very much for being my guest today.
Thank you.
And I certainly wish you the best of luck.
Thank you for the time. I
All
appreciate
right,
it.
thank
It's
you.
a great opportunity.
Well, thank you, viewers, for tuning in today. I hope you've got to learn a little bit about Bob. I think he's a great guy, and you definitely, as I said, have to get out there and vote. Just for the record, I invite his opponent, if she would like to be on the show, to have equal time. My contact information is here on the screen, or just contact the studio, and I would be more than welcome to set something up for you. In the meantime, thank you for tuning in with Around the Town with Mark. It's always great to see you, and we'll see you again on another show very soon.